From the perspective of someone who just came off of his first exposure to SIRENIA through In Styx Embrace, the debut track off of Arcane Astral Aeons, I am fascinated enough to consult more of their work. I'm highly geared at this point to hear more of what SIRENIA has to offer in the realm of talent. Not just because it's a specific talent, they're quite impressive, but they're yet another example of this long-running expression on this channel, and that Europe is such a talented realm of the world in regards to metal music. I've certainly not shied away from telling, or certainly showing you proof of how much I love this space, and how much in many ways I don't want to leave. Even though I try to be democratic in the artists that I cover on this channel, there's talents worldwide, but Europe has such a sweeping supply, I'm just... Again, like I said, for simplicity's sake, and maybe it's a bit repetitive, but I really don't want to leave. I love this realm of the world. As somebody who's a big metalhead, of course, that's a first genre preference for me, and everybody's pretty selective in regards to their taste, but metal for me is, for the last many years, over a decade at this point, been a first inclination of an impressive listen. I love metal. And hearing the dimension with SIRENIA and their originality, which is very similar to many types of groups within the European landscape, but as, a specific talent, SIRENIA, just, again, that first exposure considered, I absolutely love the uniqueness in their construction of music, not just from very talented vocals on part of Emmanuel Zoldan. I love that name, by the way. It's very pretty. I told you in the last video, I get up to speed at least as best I could with some of the particular elements maybe I was forgetting about. Her vocals were very impressive. That lower pitch with the natural vibration just really captivated me. But the symphonic metal edge, I love even more than I do metal. That's a particular subset of metal that I'm always geared to hear. The orchestral atmosphere, the variety of the instrument choices, the structure of the piece, how many components of instruments they're able to weave in, which I'm not surprised at all, considering that, my path perhaps was different from maybe some of you that came across with SIRENIA, and you're now at this point perhaps a longtime fan. I'm coming at them from consulting groups out of order. In that Morten Veland, I'm very familiar with him through Mortemia, who I've covered, a lot on this channel in regards to his specific offerings. That's his solo project, if you're not familiar. It's Norwegian Gothic symphonic metal, the same as SIRENIA, but it certainly sounds similar in many ways. But the vision of what he's able to offer there, in regards to solo releases, and many have impressed me from what I've covered on this channel, is perfectly embodied and magnified even with SIRENIA. Like I've said, I love this spiral that I've taken in terms of the European journey. I just keep coming across many talents. And as I broaden out this channel in regards to a music focus, and it's been a long ambition of mine since I founded this channel in the beginning, over 2022, I've materialized this goal pretty well, I think. And over 2023, I can already see the building blocks constructing to a very effective materialization of the ambition I've long had in regards to sharing my love of music with many of you and having a collaborative experience of enjoying talented art together, or perhaps engaging with art you never knew would be quite great. And there's plenty in the music space. As I said many times, music for me, apart from many different types of artistic ventures, and there are many to mention, they're all, beloved in some way with me, but each artistic style is very unique. The presence that music has had in my life is deeply personal and is of a first passion. I adore what music has provided to me in many ways, not just perhaps in entertainment and value of appreciation of good art, but also just in the personal resonance of how it's affected my life. Music is it's a very personal, devoted love with me. And the European landscape, again, I absolutely love this space, and I love being able, and part of this channel, to have that collaborative experience of fostering relationships with other people out there who have the same love that I do, or perhaps are discovering a love for it through, my content, if that can be provided as a particular route for you. I love being able to showcase artists that, perhaps for many of you, you've been artist shopping, right? You have perhaps a wealth of talented artists on your playlist, and I, of course, have many, but you haven't known where to look. And so I like being able, if I can, to give you those pathways to exploring new talents through a collaborative model where we can enjoy music together, especially on a first impression, as this channel, that's the model I've constructed with it in regards specifically to music. Europe has been such a great journey to take, and with SIRENIA, they're another fabulous addition, and I can't wait to hear more from them. So, into the night, maybe you're somebody, again, who has not had this first introduction with their work, and maybe you haven't expanded your perspective, maybe not necessarily even speaking more specifically than just European metal, maybe you're not as familiar with Norwegian Gothic metal. I mean, I'm still exploring. Mortemia and SIRENIA are really the only names I've looked at this point. Although, in terms of the record they're signed on with, Napalm Records, there's a great variety of artists they carry from many other countries as well. I'm very impressed with who I found in terms of who they carry. And I'm sure many other names, in fact, many other names I know I have to consult at this point. But SIRENIA is the newest addition to my familiarity with their artist library, and I am swept away. Let's see if Into the Night can mimic the same energy again. This is the second track that's coming right off of In Styx Embrace. I'm curious to hear more. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the music video we have in this case, as well as provide you the lyrics. If you're somebody that likes to read along with the narrative of the piece, again, I try to make my content as accessible as I can to anybody in regards to taste and experience. And so if you're somebody that likes to read along with the message of the piece and the narrative, I'm going to try and read along with it myself. And although it might be hard, I might get distracted depending on SIRENIA. Their vision, again, really impressed me on a first debut listen. I'm going to have the lyrics available for you within the video feed, but track along with the piece as we explore it. All right, without further ado, Into the Night. I can't wait to hear more from this group. I knew I'd like them. Anyway, because Mortemia is just so great. Here we go. Let's consult this piece and spend some more time with another beautifully talented metal group within the European landscape, as there are many. All right. And certainly I don't see this journey ending anytime soon. I'm having so much fun. Great presence. I like the vocal addition there as well. It's a great feed into the song. Sets a nice mood. Wow. Nice scale down too. See, I love vision like this. I freaking love Europe. See, rich vocals on part of Emmanuel. Oh wow, the drifts, I love that. Oh. This is great atmosphere, I just love this. Again, there's this wide vision. This song is such a great structure. It just flows seamlessly. There's an even transition, but there's a consistent path. Wow. Forgive me if I'm at a standstill for words. I'm just like, I'm really enjoying the scope of this, especially in those chorus sections. See, oh man, I love it. Again, what SIRENIA is able to capture in their music instructions in terms of all the varied influences and the instruments just really captivates me. I'm assuming a lot of it is due to Morten. To be fair to the rest of the group, but Morten specifically just, man, visionary indeed. Okay, a bit of softer decline. What are we going to feed into here? Key change? Maybe? I love the menace. Oh, we went back. Okay, good. I like that. Bit of a drop-off, change it a bit of an alteration, but they flow right back into that setup. I love this. Oh, what changed? I like some unexpectedness. Unpredictability. Great ending. And the ends of this. Morton does a lot of this on Mortimia if you're not familiar. Oh, I love it. Oh, it's such an effective conclusion, especially as a wind down. By the way, I love the Gothic style type visual. In terms of pictures, it does remind me slightly, although I got quite lost in the tune because it's just really good. We'll talk about that in a minute. The scenery, I didn't follow the story in specific as much. It seemed more like a dramatized Gothic vision with a darker atmosphere. It reminds me a bit in styling of like maybe classic era monster movies, or I guess more specifically in regards to cinematic offerings. Some of you who follow my work, you know that I tend to keep a prioritized lens on that particular space in the art world as well. Maybe you're familiar if you're a Marvel fan of Werewolf by Night, which was a great evocation of what's familiar among monster-type movies in terms of that classic energy. I didn't think it was perfect entirely, but the visual itself and the experience and the atmosphere of that was just it was an enrapturing time for me. I've watched it twice. I'm going to watch it a third, actually, because it just really impressed me, which... Not to go on a tangent, but Marvel hasn't necessarily done for me in the most recent iteration of phases, as we call it, in terms of like maybe offering since 2020. I've been kind of on the ball in some parts and not. I didn't used to have experience in the past. I used to be a big Marvel fan, all the way through. Less so now. But that track really captivated my interest. So the visual imagery reminds me a lot of a type of tonality, especially on the ending. Like that, it felt to me kind of like a dark monster movie, even though there's some deviation. The atmosphere to that piece. You know, years ago, if you had told me that later on in my life, I would be a fan of operatic influences, not just in the background, by the way, but is also present on the first track we looked at, In Styx Embrace, but with Into the Night, Emmanuel Zoltan's vocals. She's really impressive. It's that operatic edge, though. For me, I think it has to be not only with the European influence. When it's blended into music and the rock scene, it works. I found that quite exquisite. I mean, that range is incredible. And there's many European women that I can think of in regards to female-fronted rock groups that have such dynamic and individualized voices. Of course, many, again, like I said, never countries, not unintentionally to throw shade anywhere. But... that opener is incredibly strong, and it does fit. Well, I'll cut back to that in a minute. But for me, when I speak about operatic influences, I'd say maybe in the past exposure. Some of you, of course, I'm thinking immediately like, oh yeah, we've known about SIRENIA for many years. If you've been a fan for as long as they've been around, I think in terms of my experiences to what's her name, Uli Perhonen from Snow White Blood. She's a German singer. She's done some work with Blackbriar, which is how I first became accustomed to her. Blackbriar, if you've never heard, I talk about them exceedingly on this channel. Love them. Dutch metal, symphonic metal as well, with a mythic twist. Love them. Uli Perhonen did a collaborative track with their front lady Zola Kolk a couple years ago. In fact, it was called Snow White and Rose Red. And that piece, in terms of the operatic balance, blending it into the rock atmosphere, I was really taken aback by it. So much so that I did take a listen to some of her other tunes from some of the Snow White Blood's offerings in terms of, let me think of specific tracks here. Lullaby for the Undead, I think is the name of it. Never Ending Waltz and You Belong to Me. I love that song. And even the recent Panic at the Disco cover that she did for Emperor's New Clothes. Her operatic vision, in terms of her talents of her voice, it's not something I've really experienced. As a kid, I remember kind of finding it funny. I'm like, well, opera was... I never would have thought, all these years later, that I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm in reverence. But now I'm like... like, I hear Emmanuel's voice, and it just... it's transfixing. I don't know how accessible opera is in regards to a range of interests, especially among my peers. Like I've said, my music tastes do isolate me, and I honestly don't care at this point because of how much talent I found, like SIRENIA. I don't care if I'm like, hey, I'm kind of the odd one out, because I'm like, I'm enjoying the real talent in the world, while you guys are all in the mainstream atmosphere in America, and I can't stand, like, other than the exceptions of what I've noted perhaps on this channel, I've noted a couple, or maybe there's some artists that are coming. Broad scale in terms of what Hollywood offers, especially in like the pop industry, I can't stand it. It's just putrid waste to me, to be honest with you. It doesn't even sound like music, it just sounds like regurgitated crap. Anywho, music with depth and a dynamic vision, like SIRENIA. There's so much of this alive in Europe, of course, but in other places in the world as well, and there's some in America, to be fair, too. I don't mean to come across as a bit snooty in any way. I'm just like, again, you know talent when you hear it. And I'm like, hey, I'm getting into opera now. Like, groups like SIRENIA and Snow White Blood, or singers, I guess, more specific focus, like Emmanuel Zoltan or Uli Pahonen, I'm game to hear more. Like, if there's any recommendations, by the way, for those of you more knowledgeable on other types of European talent, as I'm still venturing into this world, if there are artists you can think of that take a similar approach to their music, shoot me recommendations down below. I'd love to hear more. I mean, I've got a building list of groups I got to consult at this point that's now spanning multiple pages, but I would love to have more, especially on the operatic lines, and note that as well, I would say, so I can perhaps prioritize that. Anywho, again, not to intentionally throw shade to other artists that deserve such attention and recognition as well, but I'm just like, I'm really in the mood for some opera, especially coming off of that song. The vision to it is very much like Mortemia. And again, I have an interesting point of venturism into SIRENIA's work, given that I'm more familiarized with the artist of the future versus the artist of the past with SIRENIA. So I'm coming at this with some familiarity of Morten Wieland's talents, and that breakdown session was great. I love hearing his work. He's so talented. And again, the group is broadly, but Morten has a key role here, and I'm just so impressed with what I heard in the track structure. It is very much Mortemia, but like I said, emboldened. I love SIRENIA. The ending reminds me a lot of my favorite track off of the Pandemic Pandemonium sessions, his second to most recent offerings, Devastation Bound, the collaboration he did with Ad Infinitum's Melissa Bonney. Favorite song on that album, it's so good. Although the ones I've sold on this channel I absolutely loved, broadly speaking, but that piece is just stuck in my mind, and in particular, it's because of that orchestral side. The background choir vocals of what SIRENIA has employed, the piano opener, it feels like a symphony. It feels like an orchestra. This is like orchestra, the metal version. It's just so beautiful. I absolutely love the scope of these pieces. I'm so happy with what I'm finding here. And again, broadly speaking, this is all over the European scene. But I'm tackling these, group by group by group. And it just seems the more I venture into space, the happier I am, and the more content I am in regards to my musical library. I've got so many artists I play on a routine basis. I can't wait to add SIRENIA into the general mix of my shuffle. And this song's great in its vision. It's just beautiful to listen to. Again, like I said, a beautiful music video to complement in a transfixing, and in some cases, seemingly otherworldly song. It's so beautiful. Like I said, I freaking love Europe. I really do. And like I said in the introduction as well, I did get distracted. I wasn't reading the song as much as I should have. I mean, the video transfixed me, but that musical experience in itself, it's just like, it takes time to process how good that song is. I cannot wait to listen to it again several times. But it's got a pretty visual construction. I love, by the way, the darker metal riffs with the vocals blended in the background, like the Into the Night sections with the guttural edge. I loved that. And it was seamlessly blended again with Emmanuel's, is that how you pronounce her name? Her talents as a vocalist. I'm very impressed. I'm trying to give it like this fresh flair, because it's spelled differently than the typical like Emmanuel. It's a beautiful name. It translates to God with us. It's sweet, but it just, especially coming off of Emmanuel Zoltan, it just has such a nice flair. It has I guess I'm trying to give it a bit of like a European personality, though, in the way I pronounce it. If I'm wrong, feel free to clarify on that. I'm open to it. But hey, I'm trying to give it some flair. Anyway, I think the vision of the song, it does have a visceral sense, not just in the music, but also in the lyrics. The moon, the moon imagery is great, too. Like, the waves grow higher where foes conspired. I like his storytelling. again, European music has such a depth to it that I just don't find other places. Only there's stuff. Is this French? I thought I heard something spoken in a foreign language. I wasn't going to mention that unless I got clarification. But again, I wasn't following the lyrics in depth until I looked at that passage. So I didn't want to falsely attribute something that wasn't there in the song. I wondered, though, for a second, I'm like, this doesn't sound like English to me. I love when music blends in a bit of a different personality. There's a couple tracks that I've covered at this channel that embody that. Mortimer has done that in the past as well with some of his other works. I'm thinking to what's one of his original pieces? It's the first one that got a video too. I can't think of it. Was it The One I Once Was? Was that the name of it, I think? Yeah. Pretty sure. Anyway, yeah, because the album name is Misery Mortem. The track name was The One I Once Was. That had a bit of it. I couldn't even put the lyrics in the video like I could with this one because I couldn't find the lyrics to the choir section. I'm still trying, like, what was that in terms of what language and what were they saying? But again, it was integrating an international language that wasn't as familiar to me, and I thought it added quite a beauty to the piece. I've said on other occasions as well, other groups I've covered, D'Artagnan, they're German folk rock. I love them too, highly recommend. Especially if you're into, again, like I said, artistic vision and originality. They're very like musketeer type style. It's freaking good music. And Europe has just so much, I can't say it enough. But most of their music is sung in the German language. Or we can maybe go to American artists. I got one coming up, Becca Shea. I've been a big fan of her for a while. She's not in the metal scene. She's independent, I think. I'm pretty sure on that, Christian contemporary. She's got a song I have to cover that I'm already familiar with the lyrics, and that there is a detour with, I think the song is called King, but I believe it's sung in part with the original Hebrew. There's just something so cool listening to music and spoken in its original language. It feels like there's just a preservance. And it's fine to listen in English, of course. I'm not faulting it in any way, but it gives it this extra layer of vision that I just find so impressive. And the scale of Into the Night, like in Styx Embrace, is quite grand. I think between the two tracks, though, that introduction is so strong. Again, it's that operatic background that just immediately, it's just such a beautiful entrance. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are down below from those of you who perhaps are longtime SIRENIA fans. Maybe you've been more familiarized with this track for longer than I have. Or perhaps there's some of you who are coming at this like me, fresh. I'd love to hear what you think about the song as well. You know, from either perspective, if you still wish to disclose your opinion, let me know down below on your thoughts. But I'm just like, I'm so happy. Again, another testament to why I love Europe and why I say I don't care that I'm venturing into a niche space in comparison to all my peers. In my personal life, I don't care if this puts me in more of a separated position. I love the talent. I really do. And I know many of you do as well. Again, I've had so many great exchanges with those of you who followed me, not only my coverage into the European landscape, but my music stuff more broadly. We've had a connection point, which again, I just don't have in my regular day-to-day life. Groups like SIRENIA, I'm so happy with, and I'm grateful that I've stumbled upon the European landscape as much as I have. There are so many groups that deserve to get broader attention. I think SIRENIA probably has at this point, but I speak again in reference to my circles. I mention groups by name, no one knows. I get blank stares. So in part, my goal is to introduce people to new talents, because they do exist. Europe has a wealth of supply, and I hope at some level I can convince them to get on the train of where I've been the last year or so. Because music like this is just so captivating. I love the vision of it, I love the scale, and I love the creativity. And SIRENIA, fittingly with Morten Wieland's attributions and his talents based on Mortimer, it just abounds with this group. And Into the Night, no exception at all. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.